More at zoomcare.com. Bellagio's Pizza. Dough and sauce made fresh 6 days a week right here in Wilsonville. And proud to be serving Northwest communities since 1996. Order online or through the app by Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division. Don't let the game play you. For more information on problem gambling prevention and treatment resources, visit opgr.org. By Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration. In-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Legends Casino Hotel and Toppenish, within winning distance. Audi Wilsonville, offering unmatched service to help you find the perfect car. Online at AudiWilsonville.com. Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. By Unitas Community Credit Union. Join the team at Unitas Community Credit Union to help you reach your financial goals. And by Langdon Farms Golf Club. There's no better course in the Northwest for year-round golf. Book your tee time at LangdonFarms.com. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Jordan Schultz. The Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome into the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Ryan Buckley and Schultz with you here tonight. Schultz doing all the heavy lifting. He is producing, he is doing your traffic and weather, and he is analyzing this evening. Schultz, how the heck are you after the 31-10 victory at Autzen Stadium tonight?
Feeling good. This was a pretty exciting game to watch from the get-go. A chaotic start, but really, really good feeling. Obviously, the Ducks 5-0 for the second year in a row, so I've got to be stoked about that. They look like a true Big Ten team, Buck. They really do.
This felt like a Big Ten kind of game, and it was played by Oregon in what felt like a Big Ten kind of style. Someone who can appreciate that style. Not with us tonight, Will Ortner at his brother's wedding this weekend, for those wondering. No Ortner tonight. We also have no Anthony Newman, as he's was coaching high school football during the Ducks game. We will talk with Dusty Hara, and I tried to get Dirt Johnson on the horn, but he said that he's been up since 4 a.m. and he needed to go to bed.
Yeah, so, double duty for him today with the pregame.
I wasn't really putting that together. I was kind of just sending out the bat signal. And but we will have Dusty on. I don't know if he's staying in Eugene or if he's coming back tonight, but we'll chat with him coming up a little bit later. But I want to start to break this one down with you, Schultz, because in a lot of ways, this game felt like it was similar to last week's game against UCLA. Both of them are 21-point wins. Both of them, your defense looks absolutely dominant, mostly from start to finish, save for a drive or two here and there. Your offense kind of inexplicably leaves points on the board a couple times, but for the most part, looks pretty good, and you get a good performance out of most of your best players. There's a lot to like about this formula if you could clean up some of the mistakes. And I think that early in the season, the mistakes were really glaring, and they were really shooting themselves in the foot. They were killing drives, and surely throwing interceptions in the red zone is a form of killing drives. But I also feel like Oregon has cleaned up a lot of the things that had ailed them early in the year, and now it's these individual large mistakes here and there that are really setting them back. I think about both these last two games. It could have been 35-0 at the half today.
Yeah.
It could have been 35-3 at the half against UCLA, if not for that pick six. So, there's so much to like about how the Ducks have been coming out of the gate in conference play, specifically in the first half, against, frankly, inferior opponents. And it's not to try to take anything away from UCLA or Michigan State, but Oregon's supposed to beat these guys up. And they did not cover the spread either game, but they came close. The 3 touchdown games against conference opponents, you'll take that any way you can get it. So I'm pleased with the way this Ducks team has it rolling. But next week, you get a whole different kind of test.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely spend a whole segment looking ahead to Ohio State
next
week. Yeah, because that is nice to have an extra day off after this little 6-day window of 2 games for Oregon, but that is really the true challenge to this point for Oregon of the season so far. But today, at least I saw, thankfully, their physicality showing up again. I remember Anthony Newman talking earlier this week about how he didn't see many missed tackles versus UCLA on the defensive end for Oregon. Didn't see that much today either. Really, another word, contain, that I heard a lot this week too, referring to Michigan State's offense and Aiden Childs. That seemed like Oregon was just on it. I mean, the defense led by Jordan Birch tonight, 2.5 sacks? I think I read you the stat before we started the postgame show. They had one quarterback hurry only won because they had 4 sacks. Yeah. So they got on Aiden Childs' butt so much that they didn't even have to worry about hurrying him. They just got him, and I think one of those sacks was probably to the backup Tommy Schuster as well. But really just the physicality up front, stoked to see that as Oregon now plays their second Big Ten game. Like I opened up the show with, I really truly believe that they can fight in the trenches, and establishing the running game again with Jordan James. What was it, like 86 yards or something like that in the first quarter alone? Michigan State's supposed to be good against the run. This isn't a team like UCLA that doesn't have a defense for run. I'm shocked that Oregon ran this much on them, but there are some glaring inconsistencies with Dylan Gabriel that I would like to get to as well. But I'm sticking to the positive at the moment.
And we will get to those inconsistencies with Gabriel and some other issues that they certainly want to clean up before the Buckeyes come to town. But you mentioned Jordan James and the power run game, and that is an excellent segue to our secret score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score is 166. That's 166. A career high in rushing yards for Jordan James tonight. A stellar first half, a great first quarter. But all you need to do is remember that number of 166 and listen in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday morning's Dirt and Sprague for that cue to call. And if you text in with that number 166, you have the chance to win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Jordan James has been, I feel like, on the verge of a breakout for a lot of this season. And early on, especially against Idaho and against Boise, it felt like he had a couple games where he was almost tripping over his own feet. And his yards per carry were really solid. His overall stat lines were really solid. He was still getting his touchdowns, but he wasn't breaking any of these long runs. And that all changed today. And it felt like a dam broke, for lack of a better term. But he got the blocks he needed early up front from the big boys, and then he powered through, around, over people. It just, every which way. There were times today he was punishing second guys from the secondary who were trying to tackle him. There were times where he was beating people to the edge. He did it every way he needed to, and he ripped off a number of long runs, including a 41-yarder. So Jordan James just I think you could make a lot of cases for a number of players today, but he seemed to be the spark early, especially when you left points on the board throwing the ball. They got to a point kind of in the middle second quarter, third quarter there where they're like, you know what? Who's going to win this game on offense? This guy.
Yeah, the name of the game for Oregon, at least in the first half, seems to be chunk plays. I'm thinking of that 41-yard run by Jordan James in the first quarter. I think Terrence Ferguson had like a 61-yard catch with a bunch of yak, and I can get into that later. But the chunk plays really establishing Oregon's offense early. And Jordan James, I love that you put it, that basically any which way that he was able to run around or over or on top of. I mean, you literally saw every Madden or NCAA college football move that a running back does on the field tonight. You saw the stiff arms, you saw jumping over guys, you saw diving under. I mean, it's obvious that he is an NFL talent, and after tonight, I wouldn't be surprised. He's probably not going to vault to the top of the Heisman, but 166 yards against a team that usually runs over you on the defensive side of the ball running-wise, like, that's something to look at. And I know Michigan State's just on and off this year, but Oregon really stamped them out totally. They averaged, 22 points? Oregon did not give Michigan State a hope tonight, and one of the reasons was those chunk plays.
Yeah, and you know, I noted on the television broadcast that the announcers were saying that throughout the week in their prep, in talking to coaches, they kept saying that this Michigan defensive front is going to be the best they've seen all season. And I don't think that the coaches are just blowing smoke. I think that when they're asked in these meetings, they genuinely try to come up with what are going to be the biggest challenges for our team. And the fact that they were absolutely able to just handle the Spartans up front and allow the run game to set the tone offensively was outstanding. So hats off to Jordan James for a career high 166 yards, and just an outstanding performance from number 20.
Did you see Kenyon Barner's tweet in the first half?
No, I didn't.
Former Duck, he's like, LaMichael's up high on the all-time Oregon single-game rushing yard performances as well. But Kenyon Barner said, looks like Jordan James is going to break my record of like 320-some yards. Unfortunately, they didn't get to run that much. But in the first half, it did seem like Jordan James was going to break that all-time record.
You know what? I was at that Kenyon Barner game.
Were you?
It was at the Coliseum in LA against USC. He had a 5-touchdown performance against a then Lane Kiffin coached USC Trojans team. I want to say the final was like 62-51 or something. It was just an absolute track meet, and Barner with 300 plus that day. It was pretty special. By the way, the Vancouver 4 text line pointing out to us that it was Whittington that jumped over the guy, not James.
Oh, thank you.
And maybe that's fair, but I did see James lay some hat a couple times. There's some poor freshman safety that got in his way once in the first quarter and again in the second quarter, and Jordan James was running through him. The other thing I think happens with these guys, you talk about him like crawling up the draft board. I know Bucky didn't get drafted very high, but I think pro teams start to see what your personnel can do at the next level, and they think maybe they have the next guy who could do that too. So I think what Bucky's doing in the NFL right now could be a very positive thing for Jordan James, and definitely tonight's game from Jordan helps vault his status a little bit. So want to get to plenty more of your thoughts. Let us know on the Vancouver 4 text line, 503-864-6326. That's 503-864-6326. fan. Want to get your thoughts. We have some coming in already, but we will be getting to Dusty Hare. We're going to talk plenty more about the D-line, Dylan Gabriel. Do we have a kicker controversy? And are the tight ends cursed? That is all coming up on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, we toss it over to Schultze, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victoricos Mexican Food. Order Victoricos for your game day celebration in store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. We're looking at a fairly clear drive since it's a Friday night, obviously not a normal game time, up from Eugene to Portland. A little bit of slowing around Autzen Stadium, but most of that seems to have dissipated. People leaving a lot earlier than normal. A couple of Smokies to report. One, I-5 northbound. This is about, I'd say 6 miles before Albany, and then again, I-5 northbound. Once you get right before the Woodburn area, seeing a Smoky there as well. Right now, you're looking at 54 degrees in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 70, 77 and sunny next week when Oregon hosts Ohio State.
I'm Leif Hansen, owner of Leif's Auto Collision Centers. We've been helping with a documentary
Games Scoreboard Show. Ryan Buckley, Jordan Schultz riding with you tonight. Hopefully you're having a safe drive home from Eugene. If you were out at Autzen Stadium, looked like a beautiful night out there. Lots of thoughts coming in on the Vancouver Ford text line. Please continue to send them our way, 503-8646-FAN. We've got one here that says the secret score should have been 50 for today's game because it feels like it's been forever since an Oregon kicker made a 50-yard field goal.
That's true.
You know what? We'll be talking about it a little bit later. I didn't think we were going to get a kicking controversy this early, but we're at least giving other opportunities out in the special teams, so we'll talk about that a little bit later ahead. Another thought says, what concerns me about this Oregon offense is they really struggle if they don't get explosive plays. I also feel like Stein gets a little bit too cute. I have some thoughts on that as well. I specifically thought that when they had the wide receiver pass last week, when it felt like maybe it wasn't needed. I didn't necessarily think that about Stein tonight, but we'll get into the offense's shortcomings a little bit later, as well as your thoughts coming in on the Vancouver Ford text line as we continue with the show. But we leaned on Jordan James in the first segment as the offensive star of this game. You started to touch on this a little bit in the opening segment as well, though. The defensive line was just so stellar today. The way that Oregon bottled up in the first half the entire run game of the Spartans, and they were giving Aiden Childs havoc on almost every single play, was really, really impressive. Obviously, the guy who's going to stand out tonight because he got the sacks and because he was constantly in the backfield is Jordan Birch. He got those 2.5 sacks. He had, I think, 4 tackles total on the evening. But you look up and down that Oregon D-line, and you got contributions from almost everybody. And it feels now like that is they've built the kind of depth they're going to need to stop some of the very best teams in the conference, namely Ohio State coming in next week. But you look at the way that they're getting performances from Tatum Tuioti, from Birch, from Jamari Caldwell has been plugging up so much space in the middle recently. Seems like other guys are making a ton of plays because of him. Mateo Uyunglele making a play tonight. Derek Harmon has been a havoc guy all season. It just seems like they have these waves of guys that continue to create problems for the offensive line. And I think that may be, or what we're starting to see, is the emergence of the hallmark of this defense.
Yeah, we're seeing the physicality that Dan Lanning's been preaching that he wants to bring to Oregon really show up now, and you're now seeing the defensive line such a talented spot that guys that they used to recruit like Kenyon Ware-Hudson aren't even playing as much anymore. It's crazy to see, like the same thing that happened to Chris Hudson at the wide receiver position after Dan Lanning arrived, took over for Mario Cristobal and just brought a bunch of really good wide receivers in. That's literally what we're seeing happen. And thankfully you've got Uyunglele. He had half a sack tonight, but early in the game, Jamari Caldwell was affecting just about every play.
Yes.
He was the reason that Jordan Birch was able to get in twice on Aiden Childs, and I believe it was 2 sacks in a row. The second one by Birch, and the first one was either by Caldwell or Harmon. I think it was Harmon, that first one. And that is because he got basically, Aiden Childs got moved up out of the back of the pocket by Caldwell, and Michigan State's line had no answer. And I don't even think Oregon had to do much as far as special packages go. I didn't really see them blitzing a bunch of guys or doing many like tricks or any kind of stunts on the defensive side of the ball. So I just feel like Oregon's dominance tonight really showed. I mean, thank God for those guys up front, but then you add Tuioti and Betcher behind them. Yeah, Aiden Childs is probably running around not really sure where his option is because he's having to go to his second read and beyond most of the game.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, you're right. It seems like they are not having to send a bunch of extra pass rushers. They can get heat on almost every play against teams like this. And again, in 8 days, it's going to be a very different team that's lining up across from them. You probably are going to have to get a little bit creative to get the pressure you need to win that football game. But the way they're able to consistently get pressure with 2 or 3 guys when it doesn't seem like they're sending that many extra, and they're getting stellar coverage on the back end too, and then they're getting consistent play at the linebacker position. So it feels like because they have this reliable back end, they can just pin their ears back and go. And I love what I'm seeing from the unit. It's been really fun to hear about all the depth that they were building in recruiting and in the transfer portal, and now seeing that come to fruition. And one thing I did notice tonight is that it feels like the line has a little bit more synergy now. And there was, you mentioned not too many tricks, but I did see a stunt that they highlighted at one point in time where Amarian Winston, the Central Catholic alum, came in and he kind of chipped the center and allowed for Birch to get around him. There's an element here where I think it's more than just guys winning their one-on-ones battles now. It's guys teaming up to clear somebody out and make space for someone else. There is an element of cohesiveness I feel like we're really starting to see, and hopefully that's something that we can chat with Dusty a little bit later about tonight, as well as Anthony Newman when we hit the Ducks roundtable. But yeah, I've just been so impressed by the defensive line play. And then, like I said, you can't give credit to that group without giving credit to the rest. And the defensive backs have been awesome. I mean, Muhammad gave up a long pass for the first time, like
he looked bad on that play
all season tonight.
Yeah.
But even that,
but
like
it happens.
You're daring Childs to beat you over the top, and the receiver made a great catch. It wasn't horrible coverage. He just got beat on that play. But what stood out to me, it's like it's the only time I can think of him getting beat or even having like a pass caught on him all season. I mean, it seems like the secondary has been so stellar. And then, I don't know about the depth at linebacking because it seems like Bossa isn't out there and making as many plays as he had been. But what you've got out there with Betcher, he continues to be an animal. He's all over the field. I think you have. It's funny with all the offensive weapons, with the receivers they got in, with Gabriel, who they brought in, who was top QB in the transfer portal. This defense might be what they have to lean on in their toughest times, in their hardest games, and they might have the dudes to do it.
You mentioned the cohesiveness. They are really communicating more. It seems like along with the guys that have been there, it's kind of been a seamless transition with Kobe Savage and Jamar Muhammad and company coming in. So nice to see that for sure. I'm definitely... I guess Michigan State, after tonight, is probably not only licking their wounds, but wondering how they can maybe get Aiden Childs out of trouble, because here's how I think Oregon beat them tonight, Michigan State. It was a very like pinpointed game plan to just let Aiden Childs run if they wanted to, okay? He's going to get out for 10, 15 yards.
Let him have that if he wants
it. Yeah, it's just going to happen, but try to make Aiden Childs beat you over the top like Oregon did, and he only threw 17 times. He just didn't have the numbers.
And it worked that once early, right before the fumble, but beyond that, it felt like he didn't have anywhere to go. The broadcast on television, again, did a pretty good job of showing some of the zone coverage packages that the Oregon defensive backs were playing. Talk about the cohesiveness there, that not just on the D line, but on the back end of making sure that they're covered sideline to sideline, over the middle. They're passing guys off. It's what Tosh Lupoi has going on the defensive side of the ball has been really impressive. Dusty Hara was down on the sidelines tonight with the Toyota sideline mic, and on the other side of this break, he will be ready to chat with us. He talked with all the big playmakers after the game, as well as the head coach. We'll get his thoughts on tonight, as well as the massive matchup coming up with the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's coming up on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, we toss it back over to Schulte for the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. Looking fairly clear on the highways for this Friday night drive back up to Portland from Eugene. Beware, though, still seeing a smoky right before you get to Woodburn on I-5 northbound. Right now, you're looking at 54 degrees in downtown Portland. Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48. Tomorrow, sunny, a high of 70, 77, and sunny when Oregon hosts Ohio State next weekend.
Looking for an unforgettable escape this fall? Discover Legends
Gets hit at the one, and ball came out. Oregon might have it.
Highlights, scores, and more. This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Ryan Buckley, Jordan Schultz here with you tonight. And our lone guest of the evening, the man who's been burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. You heard him all night on the Toyota sideline mic. Dusty Hara is with us now. Dusty, how are you?
I'm great. Look, after a performance like that, I mean, that is one heck of an effort that the Oregon Ducks put out against Michigan State.
You know, it's funny. It felt a little bit like last week in that the win was completely convincing, never in doubt. You win by 21 points. You think you could have had a lot more on offense. You think you pretty much put your best out there on defense, but there were still some pretty serious things that you could have cleaned up to make it even more dominant. It's funny, I know you know this from sitting in this chair Monday through Friday, that the Vancouver Ford text line can be very glass half empty when it comes to their Ducks, and there are still some issues tonight with fans and their thoughts on this team as far as leaving stuff out there. We'll get to that in a little bit, but you have such a unique vantage point. What stood out to you this evening from the sidelines?
This defense is really stinking good. I mean, at every level, you're starting to see it click. And I think at the beginning of the year, the secondary was playing really well. There was a little bit to be desired up front from the defensive line. And I know that fans are saying, they're not getting sacks, they're not getting home. Well, they're doing that now. And I think that comes with continuity and comfortability with your linebackers and your defensive line. There's a lot of new pieces. And last year there was a lot of leaning on and relying on guys like Brandon Dorless and Casey Rogers and that continuity that they had up front. I think what we are seeing now is the impacts of Derek Harmon especially and Jamari Caldwell. There's that comfortability of playing alongside those guys and trusting where they're going to be, so you don't see gaps being jumped in pass rush lane. You're seeing run fits be true, and you have a lot of comfort with how the guys next to you are playing. And I think that what we are seeing from the front seven is they have caught up to what we are seeing in the secondary. And look, we can't not address the elephant in the room that, Nico Reed is 2 weeks in a row at corner was getting picked on by UCLA, and then at the beginning of this game against Michigan State. But they put in Dante Manning, and a lot of those just started closing up. And this defense looks really good right now. Really good.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row, the defense has looked absolutely stellar. They've only allowed one offensive touchdown over the last two games. The other unique position you have, Dusty, is that you get to be around these guys after the game in the locker room. What are the vibes like right now? I know that you talked to both Dan Lanning as well as some of the stars of the game, Tez and Jordan James and who else was it, Birch as well. So what were the vibes like down there in the locker room after the game?
Jordan Birch walked into the room where we do our interviews, and he said, I would have turned down the music if I knew it was as loud. That is where they're at. They feel, I think the point of what you said at the beginning of this is that they know that they have a lot of work. And I think that when you have convincing wins like they've had the last 2 weeks, but there are things to clean up, and they're apparent and they're kind of eye-popping, right? I think that humbles you, that keeps you grounded. But I think that what we're seeing right now is this team is coming together, right? Before the Jordan Birch and Tez Johnson interviews, there was like a little bit of downtime, and Birch and I were just sitting there talking a little bit during the commercial break. And then Tez Johnson came into the room, and he was just sitting there waiting during the entire interview with Jordan. But before that, I mean, those guys were cracking jokes. They were talking about, the game and that's a different thing, too, that when you have teams that have high football IQs, they talk about the little things, right?
Yeah.
The little things that they see when the offense is off the field or the defense is off the field, and kind of those adjustment type things. And I think you're seeing a team that has really good vibes right now, but I mean, they have bought into the Dan Lanning kind of culture of, hey, it's Oregon versus Oregon. We've got a lot of stuff that we need to clean up, and you don't get the feeling like they are getting high on their own supply right now.
And that's and they can't be, because they're going to have their toughest test of the season, at least to date, coming into town next week. The other, you mentioned the elephant in the room on the defensive side of the ball. The elephant in the room, I feel like right now, at least for fans on the offensive side of the ball, for as much talent and as much success and as many points as you're putting on the board recently, you've got 3 interceptions inside the 5-yard line 2 weeks in a row, and Dylan Gabriel obviously knows that's a bad play. So does Dan Lanning. So does Will Stein. Obviously, they don't want to make those plays, but once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a trend. How do you buck this when you really can't afford it in the kind of game you have coming up?
I think that with Dylan Gabriel, I mean, look, he was late on 2 throws tonight.
Yeah.
And it was the Tez Johnson one. It was almost like Michigan State almost baited him into throwing that ball, right? That's a play we see all the time. It was very similar, if not the exact same play that got picked off by Brian Addison and went the other way for 6 last week against UCLA.
Yeah, stop running that play, maybe.
It's a play that's been wildly successful for them. That little pivot route by Tez where he gets outside, but you got to get the ball out quick. The Patrick Herbert interception today, where look, they were going to run like a leak out of the backfield with Zach Grace, who was lined up at fullback in the I formation there, and they ran a play fake. Grace chipped on the end and then was releasing out into the flat. Well, the end just wrapped up Grace around the waist, so he couldn't release out downfield. And when that was gone, Gabriel he tried to stay on him for a little bit too long, and Patrick Herbert was open. It was a hell of a play by, I think it was Alexander, the linebacker, who made a diving catch and a great catch, but it was another ball that was late. The Tez one was late. And so these are things that you say they're uncharacteristic, but now we've seen 3 in 2 games. You don't want that to be a characteristic. And so with Dylan Gabriel, it's odd to see. It's weird to see, but at the same time, they're correctable mistakes, and I think with Will Stein, there are counters that they will have to it. And I understand the frustrations by Duck fans when you sit there and you can say, they could have put away Michigan State midway through the second quarter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that thing could have been done. But you give up those 2 interceptions, and it feels a whole heck of a lot different. You can't make those mistakes against Ohio State, though. And I think that he knows that. Everybody that watches knows that. You can't make those mistakes against the highest of caliber teams like Ohio State is. But, you'd rather have these learning experiences and runaway wins. And that may be it, too, is against teams where you feel like you have a clear advantage, you try to get away with a little bit more. And that's something that you just can't do against the high-level competition. So it'll be interesting to see how they clean that up, how they rectify it. I know that Dylan Gabriel's not happy with those 2 picks. He's not happy one bit.
No, and he was wearing that on his face. You could tell that bothers him, and certainly, like I said, it's not something that he wants, but it's now something that's reared its ugly head a couple times. So I'm imagining that'll be a point of emphasis going forward, especially on that little pivot out. But one more question I have for you. I'm not even sure. I know that Dan Lanning plays things so close to the vest. I'm not even sure you'll have information for us on this, but something that certainly stood out. And when you're looking at a game that is supposed to be close and every margin is going to count, the Ducks played 2 place kickers and 2 punters tonight. Surprised at all that Andrew Boyle got the nod on the 50-yarder that he absolutely drilled, and then also Luke Dunn and Ross James both back there punting. Are we just seeing what everybody has before Ohio State? Is there a split duty going on, or is there any information you have on any of that?
On the punting front, I They don't punt a lot.
No, they don't.
Just trying to see what they had. Sorry about that, guys.
You're good.
But
We might have lost him. Oh, wait, no, there he is. Are you there?
I got you. Yeah. Sorry.
All good.
On the punting front, I just think they don't punt a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I mean that you just got to kind of see what you got and
take reps when you can get them.
But on the place kicking with Atticus Appington, it's not like Atticus Appington is going to lose his job. Andrew Boyle has got a boot on him, and they know that.
That looked like it would have been good from 60 today.
It was, and it was right down the middle. And I can tell you that I think we see this from time to time where kickers will have a long-range kicker, and then they have their normal kicker. And that's not incredibly unique when you have depth at that position.
Yeah, it's not uncommon in college football. I can't think of a time that Oregon's really had that role in either. So curious if that maybe is the playbook going forward.
I think that for long-range kicks, I think that probably is. And we saw it tonight. They haven't really had that opportunity. I think Atticus Appington missed a 52-yarder earlier this year. And so you sit there and you go, all right, well, we'll give the guy who has the boomer for a leg and Andrew Boyle an opportunity. And look, I mean, Jerry said it on the broadcast. That was the first 50-plus yard field goal for Oregon since 2008.
Wow.
I mean, it's been a long time. And it was Matt Evenson, the pride of Franklin High School, who kicked that 50-yarder back in 2008.
Yeah, I remember that goatee.
Yeah, Evenson, best kicking coach in the state. He's our kicking coach out at Banks High School.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And so I don't know how many schools have kicking coaches, but he's ours. And Evenson, I mean, it's been since 2008. I mean, that is such a long time.
Yeah.
16 years. I mean, that drought could drive to the game today. And so I think if you have a guy that you can trust, especially in a game that's in hand like that, go roll him out there, see what he's got, because it wasn't like the game was in question. I think if it was a tight game, I think we do see Atticus Appington. Mm-hmm. But when you know that Andrew Boyle has that range and you want to see what he can do in a game, when there's a little bit more pressure, when there's a rush that isn't wearing the same color uniform as you in practice, you want to see if that guy can have it. And I don't think there's any sort of kicking controversy. I think they just wanted to see if he could do it, and he did.
Fair enough. I think that's well summarized, and I'll be interested to see if they need a long one against Ohio State, if it's Boyle who gets the nod, because after drilling that, you'd think maybe he'd have to get a look. Final one before we let you get out of here, Dusty. It is Ohio State week now. I think we can officially turn the Ducks calendar to the next week, even though college football still has a full slate of games tomorrow. You always talk with Coach Lanning about and his players about going to take their medicine, going to the doctor. You have to be perfect in games like this or close to it. What are the things that you think they'll be working on this week specifically for this marquee matchup?
Well, I think the number one thing is we don't see Jabbar Muhammad flip the field very often, right? He's usually parked as the right corner. I think when you have a guy like Jeremiah Smith, I think you might see Jabbar Muhammad.
A little shadow action.
I have no insight or intel on that, but when you have a corner that is that good and you have a receiver that you're going up against that is that good, I think we may see it. But Ohio State can beat you in a lot of different ways. And, they have got three really good receivers that would start almost anywhere in the country, all three of them, and being number one receivers. So they're going to have their hands full no matter what. I think the back end of the defense is going to be a huge point of emphasis this week. And then, Ducks have been running the ball really effectively.
Yeah.
And this is now 3 consecutive games. They've run the ball very well. And that balance can open up shots downfield. And you're going to need some shots downfield. I love that Will Stein came out swinging on the first play of the game.
It looked like he was there, too.
Which it looked like it was pass interference, too. But, you got a no call, but you took a shot and you went deep, and then you could have had those opportunities throughout the course of the game when Jordan James is running the ball as effectively as he is. but I think it starts and stops with you got to take care of the ball. You can't lose the turnover battle and beat Ohio State. And everybody in that locker room knows that you can't afford to turn the ball over, and it's something that they've done far too many times and far too often for their liking over these last 2 games. So I think that's going to be your point of emphasis against a balanced and good Ohio State team. But you look at, it's weird to compare scores from one week to the next. Ohio State beat them 38-7 on the road in East Lansing last week, and Oregon left a lot of points on the field today, and they end up winning 31-10, and the 2 scores were against the backups. So
yep.
I think we're in for one hell of a contest come Saturday evening in Austin Stadium.
Excellent stuff from Dusty Hara. Oh, Dusty, you want to plug the program? What's going on with the program podcast?
Yeah, we got the program podcast. We talked with Marcus Harper, offensive lineman, this past week. This week we'll have Alex Molden on. We like to bounce back and forth between the past and the present. We're going to go and have a chat with Alex Molden prior to this Ohio State game. Really excited for that conversation, and we're gonna preview all things Ohio State and take a brief look back at this Michigan State game in the building blocks. And I think one thing that we're going to talk about a lot with my co-host Cole Linehan being a former defensive lineman and a defensive coordinator at heart is we're going to talk a lot about this third down defense from Oregon. UCLA and Michigan State combining to go 3 of 21 the last 2 weeks on third down. This Ducks team has put the screws to teams in the most critical of situations, and see how that translates to Ohio State this week.
Excellent stuff. Dusty Hara, you can hear him Monday through Friday on Danny and Dusty right here on The Fan. Of course, catch him on the Ducks pregame show as well as during the Ducks game on the sideline. He pretty much does it all. It's The Fan, man. Thank you for joining us, Dusty. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a good night.
Great stuff as always from Dusty. Really good insights and some good info on just what was going on. I mean, I like hearing about the behind the scenes, behind the curtains kind of things that we can't see through the TV or hear through the radio. And he's a great source of information for that stuff. And now he's got me all jacked up for the Ohio State game. So, Schulte, we will get back into some of that, as well as we've got to pick a couple nits here, including the ugly turnovers in the red zone. We'll get to that up ahead on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, with the Ducks victorious 31-10. They advance to 5-0 on the season. Number 6 team in the land, getting set to welcome the Ohio State Buckeyes next week. Going to toss it over now to Schulte for traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. We are seeing, thankfully, a text coming in on the Vancouver Ford text line. It said that a Smokey had somebody in Albany, and that Smokey is now popping up on my map. Beware, he's probably still hanging around just south of Albany as you're approaching on I-5 northbound in that area. Past Albany into Salem and beyond, really clean freeways. No slowing to keep you from getting home a little later. Right now, 53 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48 tomorrow. Sunny and a high of 70. It's 77 degrees and sunny when Oregon hosts Ohio State next weekend.
For over 45 years, Pacific Office Automation has been providing winning strategies to help businesses come out on top. That's why the Oregon Ducks choose Pacific Office Automation as their office technology partner. If you run a business and want to find out how to improve your business processes and costs, contact us today to receive a free technology assessment.
Heard the call there from Jerry. Just an embarrassment of riches for the Ducks at wide receiver. I know that Tez gets all the headlines, and rightfully so. The guy's caught 40 balls on the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah.
And is right on pace to break his own single-season record of 90 catches from a year ago.
Do you know he's Bo Nix's brother?
Hey, you know what? I think I might have heard that on a broadcast. I think someone from ESPN might have had that one time.
So glad that we're not hearing that anymore this year. Not that I don't love the relationship and the family dynamic, but good God, talk about something else.
But you had Trayshawn Holden stepping up in a big way tonight. You also had a touchdown, really nice touchdown grab from Evan Stewart. No status update on him just yet. He looked like he got dinged up towards the end of that game, but didn't hear anything from Coach Lanning indicating that there was any serious issue there. So a lot of things to like on the offensive side of the ball, but the big elephant in the room right now is tonight, and going back to last week, red zone turnovers. You're going into now the biggest game of the season against the UCLAs and Michigan States of the world. They're not going to matter. As we discussed with Dusty, Dylan Gabriel knows he can't make those plays. Will Stein can't have those plays. Dan Lanning can't have those plays. You can't have plays like that and win games against other top 10, top 5, top 3 teams like you have in Ohio State. You've got some thoughts on Dylan Gabriel as well, but for as efficient as he has been, for as much of a connection as he has developed with Tez Johnson, there are now 2 weeks in a row some really mind-boggling throws.
You know, I have heard all summer leading up to this point, it's the most experienced quarterback in college football following the other most experienced quarterback in college football, so there will be no learning curve. There will be no step down, right? And we saw Bo Nix throw an interception, once, maybe twice last year? I mean, it happened less than a handful of times. He didn't fumble at all. His ability to be smart with the ball was unmatched last season in college football. And everybody told us that, hey, Dylan Gabriel's the very, very similar taste at quarterback that Bo Nix was. Well, he's 3-4 inches shorter, and I'm wondering now that I look at Dylan Gabriel listed on ESPN.com at 6 feet, but then Wikipedia has him listed at 5'11". I actually do wonder, A, how tall is he? Is he 5'10", and they're just trying to bump him up to 5'11", 6 foot? And B, is that actually affecting him in Oregon's offense? Now, you made a good point to me in return to that, Buck, saying that, both of his passes seem to be outside of the pocket, which is correct. He was kind of being rushed out. But what that tells me is that then he, doesn't have the skill to check on his second read? I get it. Dusty made a great point. He got baited, I think, into that second interception, the first interception. But the second one, that was so telegraphed, and it was obvious where he was throwing the ball. And I thought that this 6-year veteran wasn't supposed to make these kinds of mistakes. I'm not trying to knock the guy. I get it. But we're talking about one of the top 10 teams in college football with a transfer quarterback that has 5 years under his belt that's going to be breaking Kellen Moore's all-time touchdown record this year, right? When you keep hearing these things about experience, it makes you wonder what is going into these mistakes. And I don't know if Will Stein isn't calling the right play for him, if he's not confident checking to his second read, if it's his height. I don't know what it is, Buck.
Well, Dusty, I thought, made a good point. 2 of those 3 interceptions now over the last 2 weeks have been on the same play. It's that little dig where Tez goes in at first and then tries to kind of sit and pivot and go out right at the pylon. And he slipped against UCLA, and Gabriel threw it anyways. And today he stayed on his feet, but it looked like he was baited. So then my other issue is I guess it's both with Stein and with Gabriel. If that was the play that was like an Achilles heel last week, do you need to go back to the well on it again this week? And also, don't other teams know it's coming now? If Dusty says it's something that they love to do, if we saw him try to do it but misfire on it last week, it feels like one too many trips to the well. And so I'm not trying to slam Stein either. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I'm not a quarterback, a coordinator, but I am an armchair quarterback. That's what we have these positions and these microphones for. And so it seems like it's less about not being able to make the second read, because it just feels like those plays are designed kind of to go one place and one place only. And so, whether that is trying to simplify things for Gabriel or not, one of the texters here says that the Ducks QB too often looks like a freshman when he's in the red zone. And, I don't know that that's totally fair, but also those throws, the decisions were bad. The throws were ugly. So we've seen so much tremendous play from him so far this season, but there's a level that I've seen from Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma when he was a Heisman contender a year or two ago, and that level hasn't quite been unlocked. It includes hitting some of those deep shots that we saw earlier in the game today, some of those deep shots that we saw missed against Boise State, and certainly when you realize, I almost am more not disappointed is the wrong word, but I guess frustrated by it seeming like with these interceptions, like sometimes those throws aren't there and he's making them anyways. And that scares me when you have a quarterback who might be forcing it. And I don't think that's what he wants. I don't think that's what Stein wants. I bet we see a very ball secure, conscious Dylan Gabriel against the Buckeyes.
Well, one thing that Dusty did point out when we were just talking to him, and it's something that I think Jerry, I think it was Jorgie that pointed it out on the broadcast, is that his passes were just late. That Dylan Gabriel, on both of those interceptions,
timing's a little bit behind.
Yeah, made the decision about a second too late to throw the ball in there. But then we also saw him, not getting the ball out and getting sacked earlier in the season as well.
Right.
And we also heard leading up to this point was that Dylan Gabriel has not been what was it? Oh no. Here it is. Dylan Gabriel cannot be thrown a defense that he has not seen. That's what was being said basically, that Dylan Gabriel is so experienced that you can't throw a defense at him that he hasn't seen. Well, then why is he being baited into these things? If he's seen everything, does it not make sense that he shouldn't be baited? He should be looking for that on that curl for Tez and waiting that extra half second. So once again, I don't know if it's Oregon's scheme, if it's Will Stein calling these plays in the wrong spot, but there's just something, I would say, with his comfort level that's making him make these decisions. And maybe it's just because he's in a new school. I don't know.
I'll be interested to talk to Anthony Newman about this too, because I do think there is something to when the field gets shortened, the different plays that are in your arsenal, the ways that you can attack. And I don't know if that's part of what the issue is here for Gabriel and Stein together, just with figuring out what's comfortable in the playbook from inside of 5 or 10 yards rather than when you have 60 ahead of you and you can stretch the field. And you with less depth, there are only so many things that you can do. And yes, with the personnel you have, you should still be able to thrive in this area, but it doesn't feel like they've found a comfort zone in the red zone either. So we'll be interested to see what changes or schemes they draw up this next coming week against Ohio State. Coming up, a couple other things I want to get into. Looks like and sounds like we may have a split kicking situation coming up. How does that make you feel as a fan? Is that a positive or a negative? And additionally, is there a tight end curse going on? Things are getting a little bit squirrely. We're going to have to talk about it next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, we toss it over to Schultze, who has the Ducks Game Day Traffic and Weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. Don't see any Smokies north of Salem, but still seeing a Smoky or two on I-5 northbound as you approach Albany. The drive looking very clear, though, from Eugene all the way up to Portland, a speed limit commute to get back home. 53 right now in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 70, and it's 77 and sunny when Oregon hosts Ohio State next weekend.
Your home for Oregon Ducks football is KFXX KWJJ HD2 Portland.
Go to the house!
1080 The Fan, an Odyssey sports station. We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Two big bodies beside Gabriel. Now they separate and go to the line, and under center it's Gabriel. James in the backfield alone. Pitch it to James going left. Gets to the corner and scores. Jordan James.
With the coaches and players you want to hear. Your feedback on the contest. Scores and highlights from across the country. Post-game traffic reports. And analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks Post-Game Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods PDX, Victorico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Jordan Schultz, the Ducks Post-Game Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show. The Ducks winners 31-10. They take care of Sparty They are now 5-0, the Oregon Ducks, number 6 in the land, heading into a marquee matchup next week when they welcome in the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll still have more on that game coming up, but a couple things standing out still from tonight, Schultze, that I want to get your thoughts on.
Other than Jonathan Smith looking really weird in Michigan State gear. I can't fathom that. It just looks odd to me.
It does look odd. I also just now saw this in the break, kind of a troll job on Twitter that had the box score from last year's Civil War, where the Ducks won 31-7.
Yes.
And this year, when the Ducks beat Jonathan Smith 31-10, and someone says, left your alma mater for 3 measly points. I had to laugh at that.
Well,
I think very highly of Jonathan Smith, but I do not think that job is an easy one in East Lansing, cleaning up what Mel Tucker left behind. And, the Ducks had their way with Jonathan Smith once again tonight.
No, but it's accurate because he did bring, 5 or 6 Beavers with him. I think Jack Velling was starting at tight end tonight,
yep.
The starting center, and then obviously Aiden Childs from Michigan State.
And then your offensive coordinator, Brian Lindgren, as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. A couple of other coaches as well, but yeah, Brian Lindgren, the big one. So yeah, just kind of robbing OSU to make Michigan State,
So one thing that stood out to me, and it's weird, I feel like it should almost never take up airtime talking about the people who swing their legs in the game of football, but the kicking situation. How does it make you feel as a fan knowing we could be going into a split kicker situation with on one hand, you have Sappington, who hasn't really done anything for you from distance, but on the other hand, you have a walk-on in Andrew Boyle, who you haven't really seen until tonight. It drills one, and now you have one of the best teams in the country coming in. And do you know what you're doing there?
I mean, it actually makes me happy as a Ducks fan because
I'm kind of there too.
We have dealt with such a crappy set of years from Camden Lewis. I'm sorry. I know he's the all-time leading scorer for Oregon, but he could not hit a field goal outside of 40 yards. And then outside of the Evenson field goal, which was like a 50-yard field goal, I think the longest one ever in Oregon history is like a 59-yard field goal by Jared Siegel, right?
Yeah.
And I was at that game. It was kind of few and far between for Oregon ever to get a good kicker. So now
that was like 2001 or something.
01 or 02, I believe. That was a long time ago. And now that they have not one but 2 good kickers, because Sappington's 53-yard miss was long enough. It was, I think, to the side. And then you saw Boyle that probably can hit it even from farther away. I love that the Ducks have 2 kickers that they can lean on. I'm fine with it. I think after suffering like this PTSD from Camden Lewis's kicker before, yeah, they could throw 3 out there. As long as they can hit it from 50 and give Dan Lanning a little bit of an extra layer to his offense, yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah, I am too, surprisingly. I mean, I think with Sappington too, it's funny. I've got this group of friends who are alums, and the group chat is always firing on nights like tonight. But even like the in the Boise State game, he missed the extra point that forced them to need the field goal at the very end of that game, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, my friends were calling him Cardiaticus, and then when he started drilling everything, he became Automaticus. And right now, I don't know whether we're going to get Cardiaticus or Automaticus out there. And so at least for the long ones, I'm good with Boyle being the choice there. Additionally, this is kind of an odd stat, and if you play fantasy sports, you may be aware of this. It's been a rough year for tight ends in the NFL. It started to become a rough year for the Oregon tight ends, who through 5 games, despite tons of talent in Terrence Ferguson, Kenyon Sadiq, Patrick Herbert, they don't have a touchdown yet. Is that position group cursed? And, I mean, today, one of the interceptions was intended for Patrick Herbert in the end zone. Today, Terrence Ferguson had a walk-in if he just catches that ball coming across the middle. I don't actually believe in curses or anything like that, but it's an odd anomaly when you have as many scoring options as the Ducks do at tight end, and not one of them has hit pay dirt yet this season.
Well, there were a lot of drops, I feel like, by all the receivers today on Oregon's side, and that is definitely something to work on when they go to the doctor next week. I hope they show them all the film. It's like, guys, catch the ball first before you move. I mean, this is basic stuff, but I'm not really worried about T-Ferg scoring. He's such a yak guy. I don't need him to score touchdowns to be successful for Oregon. He did affect the game in another way, but you do bring up a good point about the lack of maybe overall tight end usage, and it's something going into the Big Ten, Buck, that I actually really hope Oregon is going to do, and that is go with that 2 tight end attack. I know they're the spread guys. They rush a lot. They usually do 2 running backs instead of 2 tight ends, or a lot of trips and 2 running back and then no tight ends. Like, I get that that's kind of how they're built, but going into a new conference, you got to do some new things. And I mean, I might be out there in left field, but I do think the way that the NFL has really revolutionized the 2 tight end offense with Bill Belichick doing, that with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez back in the day. Now everybody, not only in the NFL, but I see teams in the trenches copying that too. So I really do hope that Oregon goes forward with Herbert, with Sadiq in as many snaps as they've had them in, because I feel like they've been in the game a lot, but you're right, they just haven't been hit for the TD. So you wonder if it's like just not enough plays being called for them, or looking back, there are probably a couple of drops, but I hope they call even more plays for the tight ends going further into the Big Ten season.
I also just love how diverse that position group is, where it feels like, tonight on the broadcast, on the television broadcast, that is, they were comparing Terrence Ferguson to Travis Kelce just because of the measurables. They're basically they're the exact same height, the exact same weight, and they have the exact same arm length or wingspan. I don't necessarily see Kelce when I see Ferguson, because Kelce, to me, almost in his prime was more of like a big receiver, and Ferguson's maybe a little bit more rumbling. But I look at Ferguson almost like a poor man's Gronk. Like once he doesn't have the sharpest cuts or anything like that, but he's super reliable catching the ball, save for the 6 that he probably dropped tonight. But once he gets going, he is so hard to bring down, and he's got legitimate open field speed that is a real problem for people. Then in Kenyon Sadiq, you have a guy who has been already compared to Brock Bowers as far as the different ways that you can use him. Certainly, the production isn't anywhere near what Brock Bowers is doing at Georgia, but they've already tried handing the ball off to Sadiq, lining him up as a fullback, lining him up as a receiver, lining him up hand in the dirt as a normal tight end, and he can do all that. And then we know that Herbert's bread and butter really is his blocking ability, but then you can leak him out, and he's in the past been reliable enough to make some big plays for you. So those are all things that I think can be heavily utilized and leaned on as you move into Big Ten conference play, and hopefully you have certain stuff that all 3 of those guys can contribute this next coming week against Ohio State.
Yeah, I really think that going forward, we're going to see a lot more usage of the tight ends. And frankly, I wouldn't mind. I know you said that Will Stein getting a little cute today wasn't necessarily something that you wanted to see, but I would not mind getting the tight ends involved in that. And Sadiq, I do feel like if the Ducks are going to get to the college football playoff, he's going to play an integral part, whether it be like, a special touchdown, or we're going to see like him.
He's had a couple 2-point conversions where he's been a little gadget guy for him, so I can see it.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if it's going to be like a Jack Coletto usage, like it was for Oregon State, but he's going to be involved in a big offensive play for Oregon this year that's going to be the turning point of one of those big games. Maybe Ohio State next week, maybe Michigan, but I definitely see that happening. And then obviously the special teams, we need more touchdowns from Tez Johnson on punt returns. Like that's going to affect the season later on as well.
It does feel like Tez was so electric early on with his punt returns that now teams, especially the ones in conference play that might be a little bit better coached, are not going to allow a whole lot more of that. There may be some more kicking out of bounds or kicking short to make sure that he's got a fair catch it. But
a lot of good punters in the Big Ten too.
Yeah, they get used to it. Speaking of punters, Iowa loves to punt. They visit Columbus tomorrow against the Buckeyes. We still need to get into the Ohio State matchup for the Ducks, the rest of this weekend's college slate. But coming up next, it's time for our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. A lot of good candidates tonight. We'll pick Schultz's brain and we'll decide on one. If you have your ideas for a Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game, let us know on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-8646-FAN. And we'll be back with that here on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, it's time for Ducks Game Day Traffic and Weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's of Mexican food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Looking fairly clear on I-5 northbound if you're heading home from Eugene up to downtown Portland. Trying to spot some Smokies. I do still think the Smoky is hanging around I-5 northbound south of Albany, possibly 2 in that area. But once you hit the Salem area and beyond, I do not see any Smokies or traffic keeping you down. 53 in Portland right now. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48 tomorrow. Sunny and a high of 70. 77 degrees and sunny when Oregon hosts Ohio State next weekend.
Bellagio's Pizza, a local favorite since 1996. This is Mike Barrett. There are 13
throws, end zone, caught, touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the text to win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. The Ducks winners 31-10. The number 6 team in the land advances to 5-0 on the season. And they have their big marquee matchup next week, Autzen Stadium, welcoming in the Ohio State Buckeyes. But right now, we're still focused on this game, and it's time for our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. I'm going to give an honorable mention to my cousin, Ruquan Buckley, defensive lineman for the Michigan State Spartans. He had 1 tackle tonight.
Oh, hell yeah.
Not actually my cousin. I don't know him. He's 6'5", 312, and we don't really look alike.
You don't have those genes?
But Shout out to all the Buckleys out there. No, I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight for the Bellagio's very best player of the game, Schultze. And I'm going to give you kind of a dealer's choice. I've got some nominees for you. But first, want to remind you that the very best player of the game is brought to you by Bellagio's Pizza. When you hear the text to win Q in the noon hour of Mondays, Danny and Dusty, you could win a free delicious pizza from Bellagio's. But of course, you need that name, and it has not yet been decided on by one Jordan Schultz. I've got 4 potential choices for you today, Schultze, for the very best player of the game. First one, Jordan James. We talked about him a lot in the first segment. Career high 166 yards, set the tone in the run game, got in the end zone, has been doing bell cow work all season, but this was really his big breakout game. Number 2, stay on the offensive side of the ball. Let's say Tez Johnson. Feels like all the guy does is roll out of bed for 10 catches and a touchdown every single game. He's now 5 games into the season. He has a touchdown in every single game. Another 10 catches tonight for 84 yards and a score. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line we've talked plenty about, absolutely dominating tonight. They were the dominant unit, the dominant person in that unit. Jordan Birch, we've talked about the 2.5 sacks. And then sneaking in, I don't know if it's an honorable, I won't even say honorable mention. I think he's in the mix for the very best player of the game. The first 50-yard field goal since 2008. What about our kicker? Does the kicker make his way as the very best player of the game? Of course, talking about Andrew Boyle, the senior out of Camas, Washington. So, Schultze, of those 4 choices, who do you think deserves the Bellagio's very best player of the game?
I mean, I can't give it to the kicker. I'm sorry. Love you, Andrew Boyle. Sure, you're a great guy. I'll have a beer with you sometime if we ever get the opportunity. But I got to go with my namesake, a fellow Jordan. Not Jordan James, unfortunately, but Jordan Birch on the defensive side.
Okay.
Just nuts. I mean, 2.5 sacks, obviously in on another tackle as well. The one quarterback, Hurry, he was also in on when he didn't get the sack. So Jordan Birch was just making Aiden Childs' world hell tonight. Really loved to watch Oregon's defense. Seemed to me to take that next step, and one of the main reasons in that was because of Jordan Birch. And can't forget his fumble recovery early in the game, kind of that chaotic start. It saved Oregon's game, in my opinion. It really kept Oregon going. So, yeah, Jordan Birch, definitely my Bellagio's player of the game.
So, remember Jordan Birch when you hear that text to win Q in the noon hour of Mondays, Danny and Dusty, right here on The Fan. And if you have that answer and hit the text line with that Q to win, you could win the Bellagio's pizza this week. So, great performance by Jordan Birch. I wish I could kind of give it to the entire defensive line, because it felt like Jamari Caldwell, we talked about Mateo Uyunglele, Harmon. There's just they're 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 guys who made a huge impact on the defensive line. They're going to need every bit of it against Ohio State, and that's what we need to talk about coming up next, Schultze. We're going to preview the big one at Autzen Stadium next week. Ohio State comes to town. They have a game first at home in Columbus tomorrow. We'll preview that, but really what we're going to be looking ahead to and kind of our keys to the game as we start to turn the page and look at the marquee matchup of the Big Ten season for the Oregon Ducks. We'll do that next on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, toss it over to Schultze with traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Looking fairly clear if you're going I-5 northbound from Eugene all the way up to downtown Portland. I don't see any backups along the way. As far as Smokies go, still beware. I-5 north as you're approaching Albany. They do look like there are a couple still in that area right now. 53 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48 tomorrow. Sunny and a high of 70. It'll be 77 and sunny next weekend when Oregon hosts Ohio State.
Hockey is back in
Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Scrolling through the Twitter timeline, marinating in tonight's 31-10 Oregon win, and a lot of cool moments from tonight. You had the wild catch from Trayshawn Holden. You had some incredible plays from Terrence Ferguson, Jordan James, all over the defensive line. But something that I missed because it was either happening during a commercial break or I was listening to the radio and didn't have it in front of me with the game. But as part of their Cancer Heroes, we've seen the yellow jerseys, and we've heard a lot about the designs this week. But one of the cool things that I saw them doing tonight was they actually, I guess for people who are going through the cancer treatment, when they've finished treatment and are heading into remission, they get to go ring the bell that says they're done with their rehab, and they're basically done with treatment. And they let cancer survivors go and ring the bell on the field at Autzen Stadium tonight, and I think that is an awesome thing. Obviously, it's a huge personal triumph for those people and their families and their friends, but to get to do it on that stage in front of people who are supporting you, it's a pretty cool thing. So I loved that element out tonight.
So cool, so beautiful. Don't really have much else to add. I thought that was a nice little, kind of reminded me of what the I think it was at Penn State. I can't remember who. No, it's Iowa.
It's at Iowa.
They wave at the Children's Hospital after the end of the first quarter. I love that acknowledgement of people that are going through struggles, and then here, really, really great. Congratulations to those people. What an outstanding situation and battle that they have now gotten to celebrate in front of so many people.
Well, just a couple segments left here tonight, Schultz, and as we do every time in this show, it's time that we revisit our Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score is 166. That's 166. That is the rushing total for Jordan James tonight. You don't need to remember that it's the rushing total. Just remember that number. And when you hear the cue to call in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday's Dirt and Sprague, you have that answer of 166. You could be the one to win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Schultze, we got the Buckeyes coming in. I've looked ahead at – I've been keeping an eye on this the last couple weeks. It's now, as odds makers have it, before Ohio State plays tomorrow. They, as you noted, they are hosting. Well, it's not. I guess it's not at Iowa. It's not at Kinnick. It's at the Horseshoe in Columbus. They host the Hawkeyes. They are 18.5-point favorites, so most people are presuming a win there. But there's been a look-ahead line for this game for weeks. It's now up to Buckeyes favored by 2.5 on the road in Autzen. The over/under point total at 56.5 points. You look across the board at kind of their stats and the comps that you have against Oregon Stars. Will Howard has had a very nice season. 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. He has a really high completion percentage, about 75%. He's not quite Dylan Gabriel with the completion percentage, but overall, he's put together very nice numbers. Quinshon Judkins has numbers really similar to Jordan James. Maybe not quite the same yards per carry output, but he's got almost 400 yards and 5 touchdowns on the year. And then Dusty mentioned him when we talked to him, Jeremiah Smith, their big receiver. He has all the same output that Tez Johnson does. He just does it with fewer catches. So he is the guy who really stretches the field, really takes the top off the defense, really threatens the back end of your defense, and also opens things up underneath for his team. But I'll be honest, as a Ducks fan, I'm scared about this one. I always get a little bit shaky in my boots when you get a top 10 matchup, and I've seen plenty of them go Oregon's ways in the past. I've seen plenty of them go the wrong way, but the hype is going to be at an all-time high. When you just kind of give your first thoughts to this game, Schultze, what are the things that stand out to you? What are the things you think are going to be important, and how do you kind of see it stacking up?
Well, you hate to look at historical records against teams, but I gotta, when you're in such an important game, I mean, whenever it is, if it's a season opener, if it's like your college football playoff, if it's your conference championship, if it's like game 6 against Michigan and Ohio State, you gotta look and see, what you've done in the past against this team, and it hasn't been pretty. Ohio State leads Oregon 9-1 all time. Yeah, it ain't good, and but now, and we're getting into the point, thankfully, where we are more confident that Dan Lanning has been able to actually put a big front on the offensive line.
Well, that's just it. It's been the matchup's been a little bit less, more lopsided than it is now. I think the playing field a little bit more even. Although, it's funny. It feels like everyone in the country would think that Ryan Day is an incredible coach, except for people in Columbus, Ohio, who want to run him out of town. But
he is a very good coach. I mean, they've only allowed opponents to score 27 points this season. I think that's like 5 or 6 a game total. They've scored a ton. You talked about their amazing offense. They've got like 3 or 4 deep at the wide receiver position, and they're all like Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson level, right? I'm sorry. I know that Oregon fans think that we're like near the top of the college
it's not
football
blasphemous
world.
to say that their wide receiving talent is right up there with Oregon's among the very best in the country.
Absolutely.
And then additionally, I don't want to say lost in the shuffle because I'm sure it'll come up plenty this week, but Chip Kelly making a return to Eugene as well, the offensive coordinator now for the Buckeyes after leaving the last year of his contract at UCLA. And I don't believe that Chip has any ill will towards Oregon because he left when he was going to be getting a show cause and got to go to the NFL where he wanted to go anyway. So I don't think there's any sour grapes here. I think it'll be nice for him to come back, but it also, he'll be one extra person with a little extra to prove on Saturday, and that scares me a little bit too as a fan. So
You feel like it throws a little extra fire into the belly of
like
everybody, not just Chip, but like I think everybody in that locker room is listening and wants to beat Oregon for Chip Kelly. Obviously, they've got their own implications and they've got their own reasons, but it is always good for a college football locker room to get some kind of like feel-good story going. And I don't know if Chip Kelly's the kind of guy to bring that up, but I know Ryan Day is, and I know he would lean into that. So
yeah, I'll be interested. I mean, both of these teams are absolutely loaded. Both of these teams have been recruiting incredibly well through the high school ranks. They also did incredibly well through the transfer portal. They've also gotten incredible amounts of support from their collectives to pay their players a ton of money to field some of the very best teams in the country. And now in 8 days, we get to see them go toe-to-toe on what sounds like, from your weather reports, a perfect freaking day at Autzen Stadium. 77 and sunny next week, 4:30 kickoff. You'll get the sunset in the Willamette Valley. It's going to be a beautiful thing. I can't wait for it. Now that the Ducks game for this week is in the rearview mirror, we have the luxury of looking ahead, including at the other games on this Saturday's slate. It's maybe leaving a little bit to be desired, but there are plenty interesting matchups, including College Game Day in Berkeley, California. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, Schulte has your Ducks Game Day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Still looking at a fairly clear drive on I-5 northbound if you're still headed up from Eugene past Salem into downtown Portland. Although, if you're turning around or dropping somebody off, beware I-5 southbound into Terwilliger Curves here in Portland. It looks like there is an accident backing traffic up. But other than that, looks like a speed limit drive getting home for you all tonight. Right now, 53 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 70, and 77 and sunny next week when Oregon hosts Ohio State.
I'm Bob Burke, founder and chairman of Burke America.
Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
In the home stretch here on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show, Ryan Buckley here with you alongside me. Jordan Schultz doing all the heavy lifting. He's pushing the buttons, he's bringing the analysis, and he's also giving you your traffic and weather updates presented by Victor Ricos. What can't the man do?
I apologize, though. I am not a former offensive lineman in college, so I cannot bring that knowledge to the fray, but I am a diehard Duck fan.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And with that, though, now that the Ducks are in the rear view, I have to ask you about this Saturday. Are you going to be watching the other ball games? Are you going to go apple picking? What's on tap for Schulte this Saturday now that the Ducks are in the rear view?
Well, no apple picking. There is a visit to the pumpkin patch tomorrow
at
11. Go. But other than that, it will be all college football as well as all MLB playoffs. We've got some really, really bang-up matchups starting in the division series tomorrow. So excited to see the Yankees lose. I'm rooting for Rops Royals, and I have no Mariners to root for. So I'll probably switch off in the evening, move on to some college football. Excited to see Oregon State play tomorrow as well. So
that's right. The Beavs have a matchup with Colorado State.
Yes.
Beavs coming off a bye. I believe they're an 11-point favorite back home at Reser.
Future conference brethren there.
That's right. Also, I did the pumpkin patch thing last weekend because with Ducks played so darn late that it was very easy to go in the afternoon and not miss a thing. So.
I actually kind of like that. I will say it's a nicer season with like 2 Friday games this year, at least for the wives of all of our families, because they do enjoy Saturdays with us.
That's exactly right. Well, let's look at this slate coming up on Saturday. Again, there's not as much to write home about. Next week, you obviously have the marquee matchup with the Ducks and the Buckeyes. You also have Red River rivalry. You have, I believe that's the Penn State USC matchup as well. So lots of great games next week. But this week, there's still some of note. UCLA is going to go to number 7 Penn State and get absolutely smacked. We do have a ranked matchup, though. 9 a.m., the Missouri Tigers, now number 9 in the country, are going to College Station against a 25th ranked Texas A&M. That'll be interesting to see if Missouri is for real, and if they are, they're going to have to go in a tough environment and win there. Additionally, we talked that Ohio State does play tomorrow. They host Iowa. Iowa's 3-1, and while they have not had a lot of offense to write home about, the punts well chronicled, I wonder if they're going to have a little something for Ohio State. I'm not proclaiming a Hawkeyes win, but they're at the very least a tough-as-nails opponent. And I think as a Ducks fan, the most maybe you can hope for is that they just beat the Buckeyes up a little bit this week and make them work, make them keep all their ones out there for the entire game and bruise them up a little bit.
I think Ohio State has the 5th best overall offense in college football right now. So, yeah, essentially Iowa is literally just trying to keep them. I think they're going to let their running back beat him, and they're going to try to keep Will Howard out of the air. I think that's the only way that Iowa's going to be able to beat them. But, I mean, I don't expect Iowa to win. Are you kidding me? It's an 18.5-point spread for Ohio State.
Indiana looking to move to 6-0. They're 23rd in the country. They are at Northwestern, a very winnable game. Alabama, coming off their massive win over Georgia, number 1 team in the land. They are at Vandy this week.
Jalen Milroe, Heisman winner. Jalen Milroe, I bow down to you. That was a video game performance that we saw last week.
Dude, I mean, and as much as he did so much that game, I'm still in awe of the Ryan Williams 17-year-old kid performance, the wide receiver.
Oh, my God. I know he caught one of Jalen's touchdowns.
The plays he was making, unbelievable. That game was absolutely electric. But Alabama back in action. They face, they're in Nashville at Vandy tomorrow. An interesting game in the Pac-12, a rematch of the national championship game in Seattle from the national championship game from a year ago. Washington hosts number 10 Michigan, and this line stinks. Washington favored by 1.5 despite being unranked against the number 10 Wolverines. I'm excited for this one. I don't know what's off here. Something doesn't feel right. I know that Michigan can't really throw the ball. Washington's been very hit and miss, but apparently the odds maker is expecting a close one in Seattle in the championship game rematch from last year.
My only question is, what does Vegas know? Vegas knows something huge that we do not. Unless you're an insider, y'all are guessing like we are.
And then finally, the nightcap. Well, they're going to start early in Berkeley, California at 6 a.m., Cal Bears getting their first ever college game day down in Strawberry Canyon. They're hosting the number 8 Miami Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal and company 5-0. They're going into Cal, what I would call a former Pac-12 After Dark, now an ACC After Dark game potentially. But I wonder if Wilcox and Cal have something for Cristobal and company. It's an interesting matchup to me. Cal is a double-digit dog, but they're well coached. And it's going to be a fun scene there in Berkeley. So I'm excited for a big one there. Upset alert, I'm not so sure, but Miami sure looked vulnerable last week against Virginia Tech, and wouldn't be surprised if Cal has a little something extra for him on a big game there at home.
Wilcox is a little familiar with Mario too.
That's exactly right.
I do feel like that there's some looking back into the film archives that they've been doing this week at Cal. So I think that's gonna be a great game.
We will wrap it up. Coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show, some final thoughts, maybe a couple game balls to go around. We'll do that all coming up right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, we'll toss it back over to Schulte one more time for the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. We're looking at a pretty free and clear drive on I-5 northbound out of Eugene, all the way up to downtown Portland. Passing Salem and Albany, I don't even see any Smokies on the road anymore either. Although do beware if you are turning around heading I-5 southbound. It's not an accident, it's actually construction slowing you down through the Terwilliger curves. 53 in Portland at the moment. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 48 tomorrow. Sunny and a high of 70. It'll be 77 and sunny when Oregon hosts Ohio State next weekend.
I'm Brian Tedesco, CEO of Blaupunk America.
Well, it's almost Saturday morning, Schulte, but we're not quite there yet. Wrapping up the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show for the 5th time this season, a victorious edition of the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. The Ducks Winners tonight, 31-10. They take out Sparty and Jonathan Smith. It was, as you noted early in the show, very odd seeing him in green on the other sideline tonight. I do like Jonathan Smith, always have. Wish him the best.
Yeah, ditto.
At Michigan State, but it was strange seeing an old foe in new garb. Just always a little bit jarring. What have we left on the bone? Anything left to chew on here? I've got some. I feel like every week we could do a Tez Johnson appreciation segment just because of what he's doing week in and week out. But anything that stands out to you tonight that we haven't hit on yet, Schultze?
I mean, I don't think so. Just to recap and finalize my point on Dylan Gabriel, I'm really nervous going into the rest of this season. I don't think Oregon is this dominant team with him at the helm that we thought that they were going to be. I'm not trying to knock Dylan Gabriel, but I would say like his NCAA college football rating to start the year in the video game was like 92. He seems to me more like an 82 right now. The dude is not making all the decisions that he needs to do, and it's weird because he has the experience. So I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to suppress any concern, but realistically, I'm probably going to give myself an ulcer this week thinking about the Ohio State game. Tyson Alger with an interesting article already out saying that what's evident now is that it's not going to be Dylan Gabriel by himself beating the Buckeyes. If that's going to happen, it's going to be a team effort. I do believe that he has the players around him, though, to get that done, and we'll have plenty to say about that coming up this week. Thank you for listening to the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. Thanks to Schultze behind the glass. Thanks to Dusty Hara for joining us. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back next week, but we'll have Ducks Roundtable before that Monday night right here on 1080 The Fan.